My female, 29, fiancé, male, 32, is forbidding me from attending my foster dad's funeral. I don't know what to do anymore. Throwaway for obvious reasons. My fiancé knows my main account, and I really don't want him to see this. So I guess I should start with some background. I grew up in foster care from when I was 5, bounced around a lot of different homes, some good, most not great, until I was 14 when I got placed with Frank and Carol. They never officially adopted me, but they were the first people who ever felt like real family to me. Frank meant so much to me. He was the first stable male figure I ever had. He taught me how to change a tire, helped me fill out college applications, and was there for my best friend Valerie's wedding 3 years ago. He was just always there for me. I met Trent at a charity thing I was volunteering at for my elementary school's community outreach program. I'm a teacher. He was there with his family's company, which was one of the main sponsors. I was intimidated by him at first. He was wearing an expensive suit and had this confidence I never had. I've always felt insecure about my worth because of my childhood. When he asked for my number, I thought he was joking. Like, why would this successful businessman be interested in a public school teacher? But he was very persistent. Started texting me constantly, taking me to fancy restaurants where dinner cost more than my monthly car payment, sending surprise gifts to my apartment. I was uncomfortable with how much money he was spending on me, but I thought he was just being generous and romantic. Looking back now, I don't know. We dated for 15 months before he proposed. I know that seems fast, but when you know, right? And we never even fight. Okay, that's not entirely true. We did have that huge argument when I wanted to go to my college roommate's destination wedding, and he said it was a waste of money. And we fought when I wanted to adopt another cat after Pickles died, and he said no because he's not a pet person. And there was that time he got mad when I was 20 minutes late meeting his parents for dinner because one of my students had a meltdown right at dismissal. But those weren't like real fights, just disagreements. Things started changing after we got engaged 6 months ago. Little comments at first, like how my teaching career was sweet, but kind of childish. How I'd obviously quit once we had kids, even though I love teaching and have never once mentioned wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. Trent got more controlling over the past few months. He started saying my clothes looked frumpy and unprofessional, even though I've literally worn the same style since college. He set up this location tracking app on our phones for safety, but then would text me like, "Why are you still at Target? You've been there for 45 minutes. He started saying he needed to approve my girls' nights because he misses me too much when I'm gone. I actually thought it was sweet and protective at the time. Now I'm not so sure. 3 days ago, I got the call that Frank had a sudden heart attack and died. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. When Trent got home from work, I was still crying on the couch. He seemed annoyed and asked if I really needed to be so emotional about someone who wasn't my real dad. I couldn't believe he said that. Frank was more my dad than my biological father ever was. Frank showed up to every school event. Frank taught me to drive and helped me move into my first apartment and called me every Sunday just to check in. The next day, I told Trent that Frank's funeral was scheduled for Saturday. He immediately looked mad and reminded me about his family's annual charity gala that same day. I thought he was just frustrated about the timing, so I told him I'd try to make the gala after the funeral. Then he said the gala was non-negotiable because his father's business associates would be there. I tried to explain again that Frank was the closest thing I had to a father. Trent laughed and said Frank was just some random guy who got paid to take care of me. I started crying again because I was so shocked he would say something so cruel. Then he kind of apologized, but made it seem like I was overreacting. I told him I had to go to the funeral. It wasn't a choice. That's when his expression changed, and he told me he was forbidding me from going, saying the gala was crucial for our future. Forbidding me. Like I'm a child. Like he has any right to tell me I can't say goodbye to the man who is my father in every way that matters. I was actually planning to ask Frank to walk me down the aisle at our wedding. I hadn't told Trent yet because I wanted to ask Frank in person next time we visited. Now I'll never get that chance. The past few days have been awful. Last night things got even worse. I was packing my black dress for the funeral this morning, and Trent came into the bedroom and asked what I thought I was doing. I told him I was going to Frank's funeral. He grabbed the dress from my hands and threw it across the room. When I tried to get it, he blocked my path. I tried telling him I'd be back in time for most of the gala, but he just got louder, saying I was choosing a dead old man over our future. I started crying again. God, I'm so tired of crying, and told him I never thought he'd make me choose between these things. Then, he threatened to cancel our wedding if I go to the funeral. I locked myself in the bathroom and called Valerie, and sitting there on the bathroom floor, which, by the way, I had to install the lock myself after Trent kept accidentally walking in on me when I needed privacy, I realized something about my relationship. I've always been good at reading people. I'm a teacher, after all. But somehow I missed all the warning signs with Trent. Now I have to make the hardest decision of my life, but maybe the first one that's truly for me. Edit. Thank you all so much for the responses. I honestly didn't expect this post to blow up like this. To answer some common questions. 1. No, Trent has never been physically violent before. The dress throwing thing was the first time he's ever done anything like that. 2. Yes, I've paid rent in our apartment for the past year, even though his name is the only one on the lease. Several people asked about my living situation. 3. A few people mentioned love bombing, and wow, looking up that term was eye-opening. 4. For those asking why Trent hates Frank so much, I honestly don't know. They've only met like 5 to 6 times at holidays and family gatherings, and Frank was always super nice to him. Edit 2. A lot of you are asking about the plan I mentioned. Valerie and I talked for hours, and she's helping me figure out what to do. I don't want to share details right now in case Trent somehow finds this post, but I promise I'll update when I can. Now for the first update. So a lot has happened since my last post. Like a lot. First of all, thank you to everyone who commented and sent messages. I literally had to turn off notifications because my phone kept buzzing nonstop and I was trying to keep Trent from noticing anything was off. After I locked myself in the bathroom, the one where, by the way, I had to install the lock myself because Trent kept accidentally walking in on me when I was showering or just needed a minute to myself, which looking back was definitely another red flag I missed. I called Valerie, who immediately said she was coming over. She drove to our place with her husband Keith. They parked down the street so Trent wouldn't see their car. While I was still in the bathroom crying, God, I was such a mess, I texted Trent saying I was sorry and that I would go to the gala like he wanted. I've never been confrontational, which is probably why our relationship worked so well until now. I mean, I thought it was working well. I don't even know anymore. When I finally came out of the bathroom, Trent acted like nothing had happened. He kissed my forehead and said, "I'm glad you made the right choice, babe." And I felt sick. He made his signature pasta for dinner that night, the one with the fancy imported cheese that he always makes when we've had a disagreement, but I couldn't eat it. Just looking at it made me want to throw up because all I could think about was all the times he'd used his special meals to basically manipulate me after arguments. I told him I wasn't feeling well and was going to bed early. He seemed annoyed, but didn't say anything. Once he fell asleep, he always snores super loud after drinking red wine, which he did a lot of that night. I snuck out to meet Valerie and Keith, who had been waiting in their car for hours. We went to the 24-hour diner by my school, and that's where we came up with the plan. Turns out, Valerie's brother Will works in IT security, and he said he could set up some small hidden cameras that could live stream. I honestly wasn't sure about it at first. I mean, it felt kind of wrong. But then I kept thinking about Frank and how I'd never get to say goodbye to him if I didn't do something drastic. So this is what happened. I went back to the apartment around 2 a.m. Trent was still completely out, snoring really loud. I was so nervous my hands were shaking when I placed the first tiny camera on our bookshelf behind some of those expensive art books Trent collects but never actually reads. He suddenly stirred and I literally froze, like didn't breathe for a solid 30 seconds. But he just rolled over and kept snoring. I put the second camera near the entryway where you can see most of the living room, and the third one in the kitchen since that's where we have most of our arguments. Just as I was finishing setting everything up, Trent called out my name, all groggy and suspicious. I panicked and pretended I was just getting water in the kitchen. He was like, "What are you doing up so late?" in this weird accusatory tone that he gets sometime. I lied and said I couldn't sleep because I was excited about the gala tomorrow. He seemed to buy it and went back to sleep. The next morning, yesterday morning, God, it feels like a year ago, I sent a private live stream link to Trent's parents, Spencer and Heather, his brother Patrick, his sister Rose, and his uncle Ed, who's also his boss at the family company. I just wrote a quick message saying I wanted them to see the real Trent before I made a life-changing announcement at the gala. Trent always talks about his family like they're these shallow rich people who only care about appearances, but the few times I've met them, they seem genuinely nice. His mom Heather especially always asks about my teaching and remembers my students' names when I tell stories. It made me wonder if Trent was lying about them or if they just act different around me. Anyway, over breakfast, I casually brought up Frank's funeral again. I said something like, maybe I could just go to the short service part before the gala. I knew it would set him off, but I needed his family to see how he really is. Oh my freaking God, you guys. It was worse than I expected. As soon as I mentioned the funeral, he slammed his coffee mug down so hard I thought it would break. I flinched, which I realize I do a lot around him when he makes sudden movements. How did I not notice that before? I tried explaining again how Frank was basically my dad, and I needed to say goodbye. Trent stood up so fast, he knocked over his chair and started yelling about how we already discussed this and decisions have been made, like he's my boss or something. I said really quietly that I thought I should honor Frank's memory. That's when he grabbed a plate off the counter and smashed it on the floor, like it literally shattered everywhere. He was screaming that I was being selfish and didn't care about our future. I was shaking, but I kept thinking about Frank and how he'd want me to stand up for myself. So I said I needed to say goodbye to the only real father I'd ever had. Trent literally blocked the apartment door and said I wasn't going anywhere. I asked if he was physically preventing me from leaving, and he screamed that I could leave if I wanted to throw away our relationship. And then, oh my freaking God, then he just totally lost it. He started ranting about everything, and I mean everything. He said he'd been moving some money around from the company accounts his uncle trusted him with, basically admitting to stealing from his family's business. He said he already had plans for me to quit my pathetic teaching job right after the wedding, because no wife of mine is going to work with other people's brats all day. He even started mocking his dad's weak business sense and how he was going to take over the company eventually because his dad was too soft. But the worst part, the absolute worst, he literally said he picked me specifically because my foster care background made me grateful for attention and easy to control. Those were his exact words, easy to control, like I was some kind of project for, not a person. While he was still ranting, his phone started blowing up. First his dad called, then his mom, then his sister and uncle. He ignored them all and kept yelling at me. When he finally answered his dad's call, his face just changed. He looked shocked. He knew they'd seen everything. I grabbed my purse and just left. Didn't say a word. Valerie was waiting outside to drive me to Frank's funeral. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to set a trap for someone I loved. But then again, I never thought the man who claimed to love me would forbid me from saying goodbye to the only father I'd ever known. I just wanted the truth to come out, but I had no idea how big the fallout would be. Edit. Thank you all so much for the supportive comments. To everyone asking, yes, I did make it to Frank's funeral. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, and exactly what I needed for closure. Carol, Frank's wife, held my hand the whole time. I'll write more about it in my next update. A lot of people are asking about where I'm staying now. I'm safe. I'm at Valerie and Keith's place for now. Trent has been blowing up my phone, but I haven't responded to anything. I'm just trying to process everything that's happened. Now, for the second update. So it's been about 3 months since everything went down with Trent, and I know a ton of you have been asking for an update. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to post again. I honestly needed some time to just process everything and figure out my new normal, I guess. So, where to even start? I've been seeing this therapist who helps people after controlling relationships. She's been amazing. Like during our second session, I completely broke down telling her about this stupid stuffed bear, Mr. Whiskers, that I've had since I was 7. It was the first gift I ever got in foster care that was just mine. I still keep him hidden in my closet because Trent found him once when we were moving in together and made fun of me for being a grown woman with a teddy bear. He said it was embarrassing and childish and I should throw it out. But I kept it anyway, just hidden. I realized how bad it was that I felt I needed to hide something so important to me. Anyway, I know a lot of you wanted to hear about Frank's funeral. It was honestly both heartbreaking and healing. I cried through the whole thing. Ugly crying, not like movie crying. Carol held my hand the entire time and told me Frank had always considered me their daughter in every way that mattered. God, I'm getting teary just typing this. My elementary school planted a tree for Frank last month. He used to come volunteer reading to my students once a month, and the kids adored him. I completely lost it in front of all my students, but they were so sweet about it. Like this one little boy gave me his juice box because he said that's what his mom gives him when he's sad. Kids are the best. So after I left the apartment that day, after Trent's family saw everything on the live stream, I stayed with Valerie and Keith for the first few weeks. They were literally saints about the whole thing. Keith even slept on the couch so I could have their spare room. I got a call from Rose, Trent's sister, just a few hours after the funeral, which was weird because we were never that close. I always thought she didn't really like me, but she was sobbing on the phone, apologizing for her brother's behavior and saying she had no idea he was like that. So apparently, what happened on their end during the live stream was this. Spencer, Heather, Rose, Patrick, and Uncle Ed, Trent's parents, siblings, and Uncle Boss, all gathered at Spencer and Heather's house to watch the live stream link I'd sent them. At first, they were all confused about what they were watching, just me and Trent having breakfast. But then when I mentioned Frank's funeral again, they saw how Trent just changed. Rose told me Heather actually gasped when Trent smashed that plate on the floor. She'd never seen that side of him before. And when Trent started ranting about moving money from company accounts, Ed immediately called their financial director. Rose started crying when Trent said that thing about picking me specifically because my foster care background made me easy to control. Typing that still makes me feel sick, by the way. Patrick apparently tried calling Trent like 4 or 5 times while this was happening, getting more upset each time Trent ignored the calls. And when Spencer finally got through to Trent, he was really angry. Rose said they all watched Trent realize what was happening. Meanwhile, Ed was already making calls to lock Trent out of all the company accounts, and Heather asked Rose to contact me to make sure I was safe. I honestly didn't expect such a severe reaction from his family. Like, I knew they'd be upset seeing how he treated me, but I didn't think they'd immediately cut him off financially and suspend him from the family business. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt weirdly guilty about how quickly his whole life fell apart, which is stupid because he did this to himself. But still, I don't know. In the 3 months since then, I've learned more about what happened with Trent. The financial audit confirmed he'd embezzled almost $45,000 from company accounts. His parents offered not to press charges if he agreed to go to therapy and admit he had problems. They officially removed him from his position at the company, though. Oh, and I found these expensive monogrammed cufflinks of his when I was packing up my stuff from our apartment. I mailed them back to him in just a plain envelope with no note. Not sure why I'm even mentioning that. Just one of those weird little details that stick with you, I guess. I've moved into this small apartment now. It's actually in the same neighborhood where Frank and Carol first fostered me. It turns out Frank left me a small inheritance. Not a lot of money or anything, but enough for a security deposit and some basic furniture. Even after he was gone, he was still looking out for me, and now I'm crying again. Great. Rose and I have actually become friends, which I never would have expected. She checks in on me at least once a week. I think maybe she feels guilty about her brother, or maybe she's just being nice out of pity. But she seems genuinely interested in my life. She even came to my classroom to help with our science fair projects last month. From what Rose has told me, Trent's situation has been getting worse. Without his family's financial support and basically blacklisted from similar positions in their industry, he couldn't afford our luxury apartment anymore. I know this sounds contradictory, but I never wanted Trent to actually suffer financially. I just wanted him to recognize how he'd hurt me, but I also can't pretend I'm not satisfied seeing him face consequences for his actions. Is that terrible of me? The past 3 months, Trent has tried contacting me a lot. His messages would swing wildly between angry accusations, "You ruined my life," to pleas for another chance, "I'm getting help." I blocked his number, but he'd just use different phones or create new email addresses. Then last week, Trent showed up at my school. I was leaving after a parent-teacher conference, and he was standing by my car in the parking lot. He looked awful. His clothes were all wrinkled, he had several days of stubble, and his hair was a mess. Nothing like the perfectly put-together businessman I was used to seeing. I literally froze when I saw him. Then I just calmly asked what he was doing there. He told me he'd been living in his car for the past 2 weeks after getting evicted. I kept my distance the whole time, like I had my keys clutched between my fingers just in case, something my therapist suggested, but thankfully I didn't need to use them. He went back and forth between blaming me for destroying his life and then begging me for help. I noticed some other teachers watching from the school entrance, which made me feel safer. Then he said his parents would restore his inheritance if I just told them the live stream was manipulated or edited. Basically, he wanted me to lie so he could get his cushy life back. I refused. I said I wouldn't lie about what everyone saw with their own eyes. That's when his whole behavior changed. His face got all hard, and his voice got really low and threatening. So I just calmly took out my phone and started recording him. As soon as he saw I was recording, he backed away real quick. He knew what would happen if there was another recording of him acting crazy. I told him really clearly that if he approached me again, I would file for a restraining order. He just left after that, shoulders all slumped, and got into this luxury car that was now filled with all his personal stuff. Rose told me later his car got repossessed the very next day, which, yikes. I don't feel happy about his suffering, exactly, but I do recognize it's his own fault. He did this to himself. I donated my engagement ring to a domestic violence shelter. It felt good to use it to help other people. The director cried when I gave it to her. Apparently, it was worth a lot more than I realized. Looking back, there were so many red flags I missed with Trent, like how he'd get annoyed if I spent too much time on the phone with Valerie, or how he always had to approve my outfits for any event where we'd see his family or colleagues, or the way he'd check my location on that tracking app and question me if I wasn't where he expected me to be. I hope sharing my story helps someone else recognize controlling behavior earlier than I did. There's still a lot of stuff I'm dealing with. I still flinch when someone raises their voice. My co-teacher accidentally knocked over a stack of books last week, and I literally jumped. I haven't dated since, and honestly don't know when I'll be ready. And sometimes I still feel guilty about Trent, even though I know I'm not responsible for his choices. Anyway, thank you, Reddit, for all your support through this nightmare.